I'm broke!
Hello, my weird and wonderful human beings, and if you are new here, hello! My name is Eve Daniels, and I am here in Sweden studying experimental and biomedical sciences. And if you are likewise looking at coming to beautiful Sweden to study or stay for the short term, or maybe even longer, you might be looking for me to quell some of those superstitions about Sweden being really, really expensive. Sorry. Expensive is kind of a relative term. Is Sweden more expensive than, say, living in Middle America? Yes, absolutely. But if you're comparing it to Manhattan or Dubai, not so much. Yes, the VAT here is 25%, and yes, the standard of living in Sweden is a little bit more expensive than most of our surrounding neighbors, except for maybe Norway. But fear not, there are plenty of ways to save money living here in Sweden that you may not necessarily be aware of, and I am more than happy to clue you in. So, how do we save some serious cash while studying here in Sweden? Quick disclaimer, because my audience tends to be pretty mixed, some of this is going to be more general life advice, and some of it's going to be specific to being a student, but all of it will be applicable to living here in Sweden. The first thing you need to know about is secondhand culture. Now, when I think of thrift shopping in the US, I think mostly of wading through mountains and mountains of what is essentially mostly stuff that's 2 steps above being garbage. Chipped teacups, weird old porcelain dolls, clocks that don't work, and pitted out t-shirts from 5K runs that nobody wants. But I'm willing to do it because a lot of times you can find great things hidden in thrift shops. I furnished my entire first house entirely with furniture that I either already owned or things I got from thrift shops. I knew a fair few people in the US who would never dare to step foot in a secondhand store. Call it judgmental, call it classist, call it subversive stereotyping rooted in racist cultural conditioning. Whatever the case may be, thrift shopping and secondhand shopping used to have a bad name in the US. Of course, these days, the script has flipped, and along with it, the price tag. But that's the US. Here in Sweden, secondhand shopping has been a way of life for centuries. Long before the days of Amazon, small towns had to make do with what they had, and oftentimes families found themselves in possession of things that were no longer of value to them, but were of value to others. Throwing them out was just dumb. So secondhand culture is completely normal here, not just as a way to save money, but as a way to prevent waste and a way to recycle and reuse things. And it is just more ecologically and environmentally responsible. So, more Swedish. Now, I've said some questionable Facebook market group interactions in the US, some ghosting, some inappropriate comments, some weirdness. And that can still happen here in Sweden, but not as often. It could just be because it's Sweden. More likely, though, it's because of that first thing. Secondhand culture is completely normalized here, so it's a totally normal thing for most people to engage in. Facebook's also a really great way to keep in touch with community events so that you know when there are things like thrift scales or bakalaka lopes that are going to be happening in your neighborhood. And honestly, the marketplace groups and the community pages are the only reason that I'm even still on Facebook anymore these days. But if you really can't stand Facebook, Sweden has another option that's better, and it's called Blocket. I actually used Blocket to buy my punching bag when I moved here back at the beginning of the pandemic. It only cost me 400 kroner and absolutely saved my sanity because we couldn't go out, I didn't have access to a gym, and I really needed to punch something. Blocket is essentially Swedish Craigslist. You can search by region, you can search by category to get either exactly what you're looking for, or to randomly binge shop. Don't do that.
I'm broke!
And because everyone that's on Blocket is actively trying to sell the stuff that they have or to buy the thing that they're looking at, there's a lot less messing around. This isn't a hashtag ad for Blocket. I am not sponsored, although Blocket, if you're looking, yeah. Hi. I just really like Blocket. The one thing that I should mention though is that with Blocket, because you are messaging directly with a seller and a buyer, you are kind of dependent on having a language in common, which, because of the prevalence of English here in Sweden and good old Google Translate, usually isn't a problem, but I felt it was worth mentioning. And if human interaction absolutely isn't your thing, there's shopping online. I'm not talking about Amazon. Like it or not, Amazon is not a reliable seller here in Sweden, whether it's because certain manufacturers don't ship to Sweden, whether they don't want to deal with the taxes and duties and fees, or if they just don't want to deal with our post office. I don't know. All I know is that if I load up an Amazon cart and forget to put my address on Sweden, when I do switch it over for delivery, 90% of my shopping cart's gonna disappear, which is frustrating. There are dozens of websites specifically geared toward consumers here in Sweden that are ready and waiting to help you. Now, normally I prefer to shop small and in person, but in Sweden that can be a little bit difficult. I still shop small when I can. I prefer to patron small businesses over necessarily a larger chain, but I recognize that's not always possible, and it's not always the cheaper option either. I'm broke! For websites that are here to get you what you need and at a reasonable price, my two favorites right now are Apotea and Skorpunkten. Skorpunkten sells shoes, and the 2 times that I have used them, I got great shoes at a great price, really fast. Which is basically what you want. And I actually ordered from Apotea just last week. I got a new light panel for the dark winter days that are coming our way. And if you don't have one yet, I will link it down below because you need to get one. I'm not doing that again this winter. Nope. Nope. Not happening. I also got some multivitamins. Are they gummy monkey heads that are made for children? Yes. Am I going to eat my gummy monkey heads every morning? Also yes. Seriously, why did we not have gummy multivitamins when I was a kid? I would have eaten them so much more often. If you absolutely cannot make a purchase without physically holding an item in your hand before you buy it, which is a thing for some people, this doesn't work for you. The downside is that a lot of these websites don't necessarily have the greatest English translation page, so sometimes it can take a little bit of guesswork and Google translating to figure out, but you can usually get there in the end. These are some of my favorite recommendations as of right now, and I'll be sure to link any more that I can think of in the description down below. If you're living in Sweden and you can think of anything that I've missed, or anything that you think we should just know about in general about looking for a good deal here in Sweden, please make sure to comment it down below so that we can all find a good deal. And, you know, while you're down there, there's a button down there. Subscribe. It's about yay big. There's a little bell next to it too, so that, like, when I make a video, you can find out. Just a thought. You should not have to miss out on having a social life in order to save a few bucks. But unfortunately, a lot of the social activities that we sort of think of as normal, things like going out for drinks, or going out for dinner, or going to the movies, these are all things that are pretty expensive here in Sweden. Especially when you start adding drinks onto the bill. And unfortunately, Sweden doesn't seem to know what a happy hour is, which is something that I'm still not okay with, and will be ranting about when I eventually get around to filming my Things That America Does Better Than Sweden video. Coming soon. Most restaurants these days will have an after-work special. They get around the rules that say that you're not allowed to discount alcohol by discounting an entree instead. So it's usually dinner and a drink, and it comes out to slightly cheaper than it normally would. This can help you save a little bit, but becomes less efficient when you start adding on drinks after that, which in Sweden is pretty common. It's kind of hard to avoid social engagements here that don't involve alcohol unless you make it very clear from the start that that's not your thing. Another alternative, and one that I actually prefer, is lunch. The daily lunch special will be 3 or 4 different options and is usually anywhere between 80 and 120 kroner, which is a completely reasonable rate to be paying for a nice lunch out. It's still a great way to get out, see the city, chat with friends, and because it's in the middle of the day during the work week, also doesn't normally come with a big bar tab. And it's a great way to balance having a social life with having a budget. Think vegetarian or vegan. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about convenience foods or ready meals here, but generally speaking, when you go to the grocery store, the most expensive items on your receipt will often be meat or dairy. I'm not saying you have to turn vegetarian, like, For God's sakes, I'm not. But I do include more vegetarian options in my diet on a regular basis because, quite frankly, I like beans.
Oh man, I love them. I have a special relationship with beans.
Oh, you do?
I seek them out. I also make my own beans.
Beef in Sweden can cost you anywhere from 1 to 200 kroner per kilo. Pork is a little better, anywhere from 70 to 150. Chicken's better than that, anywhere from 40 to 80, 20 if you get it on sale at the Willys outside of town. And fish can be all over the place depending on what you're getting, anywhere from 80 to 300 kroner per kilo. Dried beans, on the other hand, generally cost around 75 kroner per kilo, and because they triple in size when you soak and cook them, then become even cheaper still. They're also really versatile. I like the fact that I can add stuff like that into salads, pastas, soups, stews, and they're just little sprinklings of protein. Just little dashes of deliciousness that I can just cook into. Who am I kidding? I'm usually eating them out of the Tupperware from the microwave, but you know, you do you. They're so ridiculously easy to cook, and that's coming from someone who's not a good cook. So, like, if you can boil water and add salt, you can make beans. Likewise, oat milk is really common here in Sweden, and when you compare it to its equivalent fat dairy milk, is usually cheaper. And beyond that, it also lasts a lot longer. Now again, not saying you have to be a vegetarian or vegan here, but shifting your mentality from every meal must include meat to being a little more open-minded about other things and including different proteins in your diet. It's not just a way to get a better, healthier diet and more varied nutrition, it's also a lot easier on your wallet. Discount bins at grocery stores. This food is not expired. It hasn't gone bad, and I know it's a little sus, but it's not expired. At least not yet. Most grocery stores are going to have something called a kortdatum bin, which literally translates to short date, and forgive my pronunciation. Basically, these are bins full of foods that are going to go bad very quickly, and so need to be sold. If you are looking for convenience items like hot dogs or ready-made meals, the short date bins are a great place to go because, let's be honest, if you're looking for a convenience meal, it's because you're hungry and you're going to eat it tonight anyway. So do you really need to care how long it's going to last in the fridge? Now, to be clear, this is not a valid way to fill out your weekly grocery shopping. Mostly because these bins can be kind of hit or miss. Sometimes they're loaded, sometimes they're completely empty, and you have no way to control that. But if you're looking for something fast and convenient in a fix, they are a great solution. My favorite lately has been my local Lidl, which has day-old bread for only 10 kroner, as well as huge bags of produce for only 20 kroner. Do you need to do this every week? No. Should you? No. Is it a great place to go looking? Absolutely. Messnault. The list of things that students absolutely need to be aware of is something called Messnault. Messnault is an app or a company or an organization. I don't really know. I do know that because I am a student here in Sweden, I qualify for certain student discounts. And Messnault is how I find those discounts. And it's something I didn't know existed until this year. Yeah. That was a waste. That's also part of why I'm telling you now. Messnault is an app that helps students find really great deals. It gives you discounts on things like cell phone bills, computers, vacations. I don't know why you're going on vacation if you're a broke college student, but it can also save you on things like groceries and clothes and essentials. The only downside to Messnault is that their English version is almost non-existent. But, you know, a combination of looking at the pictures and asking questions of my Swedish friends means that I can usually find what I need. And if I can't, I just ask them to find it for me. Earlier we mentioned convenience foods. There are a lot of super convenient foods geared towards busy people who don't have a lot of time, and most of them are absolute garbage. Like, let's be real here. You're not buying a cup of noodles because you're looking for a nutritious deal. You're not even looking for a deal at that point because the price per kilo of most of these convenience foods is way higher than anything that you would buy normally. Monday. Places will have a salad bar where you can serve up anything you choose, 75 kroner per hectogram. Per hectogram. There are 10 hectograms in a kilogram. That means that this salad is 750 kroners per kilo. That's more than the nicest steak I've ever seen. And I'd much rather have the steak. Now, I'm not saying you should never grab convenience foods, or that if you get a hot dog at a Pressbyrån, you're a terrible person, because if that was the case, most of Sweden would be. You should absolutely be free to choose the convenient option when it is convenient for you. But you should also be aware of how much you're willing to pay for that convenience, and how much that convenience is actually costing you. If there is something that you're gonna have to get used to when you get here to Sweden, it's fika. Regular coffee breaks, usually accompanied by a snack, sometimes something healthy, sometimes cake. It's usually cake. Are just a regular part of Swedish life and the Swedish workday. And while they're absolutely lovely and a necessary part of a healthy work-life balance and a vital source of social interaction, they can also get incredibly expensive if every time you have a fika, you're having it out. Now, I'm not saying you should never go out and enjoy a cup of coffee with your friends, because quite frankly, that's a shaming technique that older Americans like to use when they're blaming younger generations for the shifting debt burden that has suddenly landed at their feet with no realistic way to pay it off. And that's a load of garbage. Like with convenience foods, you should absolutely be able to enjoy a cup of coffee out with your friends when you want to. But also with convenience foods, be aware that this is a budget item that you should be spending on when you want to. Not because it's been shoehorned into the you feel like you need to category. Know where you can save and where you can't. There is nothing more toxic to trying to save a couple dollars than trying to save a couple dollars. A lot of times by trying to save or buy on a budget, we're actually creating greater long-term expenses for ourselves. When you're buying something, and it's something that you're going to rely on or use every day or need or brings you a huge amount of comfort, don't skimp. If this is something that you're going to get value from, make the investment and make it work for you. It is not worth putting your physical, mental, and emotional health at risk by not meeting your core needs to try and save for future needs. Part of saving money is knowing when making the investment is going to pay off. And if it's something that you're going to need day in and day out, or that you're going to count on and rely on, make the payment worth it. There are plenty of other ways to save money here in Sweden if you are clever about it, and I hope to hear some of you sounding off in the comments below to let me know what your favorite discount deals are, where you can find the best buys, what's the cheapest grocery store in your neighborhood. Maybe you've got the hookup to the absolute greatest deal of the century, and if you do, we'd really like to hear about it. So I hope this was helpful, and that wherever you are in the world, you are safe and you are well, and I will see you next time. Bye. Some of my favorite clothes here in Sweden have come from secondhand shops. Like this sweater. And this top. And those socks. One of these days I'm gonna have to do a secondhand haul so I can show you guys all of the great stuff that I've been finding at secondhand shops here in Sweden, but that day is not today.
Well, I spent 3 takes trying to get it right.